Should I take a weight loss drug? Let me explain. Right, I get asked this question all the time. And as I've said in earlier videos, 65% of the British population are obese or overweight. So I expect 100% of them have thought, should I take that drug? Myself included. And then I saw the prices. But today I'm talking about who these drugs might help. I'm going to explain how they work. And I'm going to tell you a few things about them that you probably didn't know, including some of the downsides. Now, these weight loss drugs are everywhere. You'll have seen celebrities talking about them. You'll have read about them in articles. You'll have seen people on TikTok. Your next door neighbour's probably on it. And they all say, oh, well, I just don't feel that hungry anymore. Like their problems have all been solved. But that's not really the truth about what's going on. And there are some other things that you might want to consider before you take these drugs. To be clear, I am completely on the fence here for whether or not you use them. As I said in the intro, I've looked into these myself. But I will say this, if you are going to use these drugs, then you do need to know about the pitfalls and the safe way to take them in terms of trying to keep your overall health up, because simply losing weight does not equal health. So what are these drugs? Well, these are a category of drugs called the GLP-1s, and they essentially mimic a hormone that your body already makes, which is called GLP-1. And what do? Well, they make you feel fuller for longer, they reduce your appetite, they reduce the speed with which your stomach empties, and therefore you consume less calories. So, do they work? Well, yes, they do. And in some cases, quite dramatically. People can have huge amounts of weight loss as a result of using these medications. They were originally designed for diabetics, but now, unfortunately, the diabetics can't get them because they're being sold privately in a lot of cases as a weight loss option. But the other thing to be aware of is, if you stop taking them, you might put all that weight back on and then some. And there was an article a couple of weeks ago that showed that people who come off these drugs actually gain back the weight 4 times faster than people who have lost weight through conventional means. And the drug company's answer to this was, people who have chronic diseases take drugs for the whole of their life. Why should this be any different? Well, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because these drugs are not fixing the problem. They are merely changing the numbers on the scales. And when that drug goes away, those scales will go back to what they said before in the majority of cases. These drugs are, on balance, making people lose about 10 to 15% of their body weight. And is that a good thing? Well, the short answer is yes. It means that blood sugars might improve. It certainly means your BMI is better. That in turn probably means you've got a lower cardiovascular risk. And also things like joints might feel a bit easier and a bit less painful because you're carrying less weight through them. But are you just losing fat? Or are you losing muscle? Or are you losing a combination? So perhaps just hold that thought and we'll come back to that in a minute. Now, the common side effects of these drugs are important. They can be things like nausea, vomiting, abdominal bloating, constipation, fatigue, things like that. And if you are losing weight because you feel awful, that probably isn't a reason to take these drugs. Certainly don't sound like they're making you healthy. That said, other people using these medications feel absolutely fine. So in those cases, they are having some kind of pharmacological weight loss. But let's park some of that for a minute and talk briefly just about weight and weight gain and what causes it. Now, I mentioned this in my last video, and I think it's important just to quickly go over that. Weight gain is a combination of factors. It's a combination of ultra-processed foods. It's a combination of genetics, things like your stress, your sleep, your habits, adverse childhood experience, poor coping strategies. There are so many reasons that people gain weight. And unfortunately, if you take these medications, they will not solve any of those problems. And when those drugs run out or become too costly or get taken off the market, all of those problems are still there. So one of the things I mentioned right at the very start is, if you're planning to take medications to help you lose weight, that is fine. But don't be surprised if all of the things that caused the weight gain in the beginning are all still there, because they will come back and haunt you again, just as they did before when you stop using those medications. And we now know that most people who stop those sorts of drugs will regain the weight. I see it quite regularly at work, where people come back in and they go, I couldn't afford it anymore, they've doubled the price, things like that, and the weight goes back on because all of those original problems have not been fixed. And on top of that, you have this rebound effect. Your hormones go into overdrive and they say, get the weight back on. And before you know it, you're back to square one or even worse. And as I said, that is 4 times faster than the rate of weight gain from a conventional weight loss diet. So be very, very careful about putting all your trust in these kind of medications. We need to talk about muscle. Muscle is your best friend. Muscle has so much benefit for you. It is your glucose sink. It stores the majority of the body's glucose. It's your metabolic machine that keeps things ticking over in a good way. And it's also your long-term protection against future weight gain. So when you lose 20% of your body mass, you may be losing 20% of your muscle mass too, which puts you at risk of insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes, or even things like falls. So maintaining your muscle mass is very, very important. And that has to be done through strength and conditioning workouts, and also it has to be done by increasing your protein intake. Even if you've no appetite, you still need to eat the protein. So while these drugs might actually help you feel better because you look better, that doesn't necessarily mean that some bad stuff is not happening in the background. And when you gain that weight back on, which most people will do, if they stop those medications, that body that you have will be far weaker than it was before. And that just puts your risk of absolutely everything back up, if not taking it to a worse place than it was before you started on those medications. Now, I do sound like I'm trashing these drugs. From a personal point of view, I can imagine in my mind what it would be like to step out of the shower in the morning and be 20% lighter and feel fitter and energized and all of that good stuff. I have dreamt about it all of my adult life, but I do not think that I would take these drugs. That might change in 6 months' time when I'm absolutely fed up. But I think it is important to realize that these drugs are not fixing the problem. Like many medications, they are just massaging the numbers. And in some cases, that is good. There is data to show that any amount of weight loss for any duration of time is good for you. But it is not any good if the end result is worse than it was before you started on those drugs. But they can be helpful. And they can be helpful for the right person at the right time and with the right advice and support. And those might be people who are stuck in a lifestyle cycle which they can't get out of. They might be useful for people who are severely obese and have never thought it possible to lose weight. And they might be useful for people with things like type 2 diabetes. But if they're used alone as a lifetime solution, that's unlikely to work. And that's because they are very expensive and they actually put you into a biologically fragile state. And as I've already mentioned, that might leave you worse off than you were when you first started them. So what actually does work and what works long term? When people do see long-term success, that usually comes from a few sensible and consistent lifestyle changes. The first one, I've mentioned it 3 times I think already in this video, is building more muscle mass. Having more muscle means you burn more calories. It is just quite simply one of the best things you can do for body composition changes that are beneficial. Even if the scales don't change, the muscle mass that you put on is good for you losing fat. The second thing is you have to change the quality of your food. Ultra processed foods and things like that are designed to override our satiety hormones, which means that we will eat more of them. The research shows that if you're given the choice of a whole food diet or an ultra processed diet, you will subconsciously eat way more calories with the ultra processed foods. That is not good for you. And also those foods are low in nutrition. So change to a whole food diet. The third thing you can do is manage your stress. We know that stress leads to high levels of cortisol, and cortisol is a hormone involved with, should we say, stress preparation. And part of its role will be to help you lay down fat, so manage your stress. The fourth thing is to consider your sleep. If you're getting poor sleep, again, that leads to a stress situation in your body, so get better sleep. The other thing about sleep, which no one mentions, when you're sleeping, you're not eating. So sleep more. Not too much more, but sleep more. And the last thing is, if you have any kind of indicators in your family of things like type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, things like that, you need to look into that. Get your bloods checked, speak to your GP, look at reducing foodstuffs in your diet which might be contributing to that, in particular refined carbohydrates and animal products. Get rid of those. Even if you don't move to an entirely whole food diet, that will definitely be better for you. And weight loss drugs can support those things, but they cannot replace them. So if you're going to use them, you really do have to do the hard work as well, certainly in the long term. So that's that. I like to think that that's weight loss drugs explained. If you get any questions or there's anything else you'd like to know about them, then please leave a comment. Remember to like and subscribe, really helps the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.